Hey everybody, so I'm trying to make these short little 5, 10, 15-minute videos covering some of the hot button topics you've requested. And I'm looking in the survey here at what people would like covered, and I'm going to post this in the channel, and we'll talk about it on Thursday. But so the biggest ask was for scripting in Python and Bash. Second biggest ask was for Amazon S3 or storage coverage. And then third was help understanding JSON. And then it was sort of a split between command line and data files and compression tools after that. So what I thought we could do right now is, for the most part, cover scripting. And we can do a Python version later. I'm going to do a shell script just to sort of show you my way of thinking and how I might sort of slay a problem. Had a couple other comments from people who said, hey, could you do a real in-depth example and not just sort of a cursory example of things? So I'm going to do a simple one-phase ETL, one leg of an ETL pipeline. And so let's go ahead, and I'm in the scripts folder. I'm going to add a file, and I'm going to just call this converter.sh. Okay, and now I'm going to imagine that this converter file is going to run on a timer, and that it's going to go look in a remote data source for a file that's been it's been bundled and compressed. It's going to pull down that file. It's going to decompress that file. That file is in tab separated format. I'm going to go ahead and convert it into CSV. And then I'm going to zip it up instead of untar it. And then I'm going to zip it up and I'm going to send it off to another destination, maybe to another file system. Maybe in this case, I'll just send it to Amazon S3. So first of all, I need my shebang line. And then I'm going to write a comment to myself that says retrieve file. These are kind of my own little steps that I want to cover. So decompress. 3 is I want to, I could do something like output the length of the file in lines. 4th, I'd like to convert to CSV. Autocomplete is kind of killing me here. Then I'd like to zip it up into a new bundle. And then 6th, send it off to S3, and then 7, send an AWS SNS message. That could be an email, that could be a text message, but I could basically get notified, hey, ding, this thing has successfully been processed. So this is not a trivial little script. It's doing pretty simple things when you look at each element, but not so bad. So why don't we do this? I've got a URL of a file already, and I'm going to paste that here. And what I'm going to do is grab a terminal from the bottom, just so that I have a way of looking up a path for everything. So which for curl. So here's my path to curl. Remember, in scripting, particularly in Bash, you want to use a full path. And I'm going to save the output as the same name. So that's all one line. Okay, you can see here. So it's a curl command with the O for output, remote, and I'm going to output save. I'm going to save my output as this, and then here's the full URL. Now the way I can test this actually is I could. Sorry, let me switch to Bash here. I'm going to switch to my sandbox, and I'm just going to execute that command. And basically look to see, yep, I've got my remote data file. So I know that command works, which is good. So let me shift over into course practice 05. So now I'm back in the same directory with everything else. I can see my converter.sh. In fact, now I can see that converter.sh has actually some content to it right here. Okay, so great. So my first step is basically working. And what I do often if I'm trying to debug some complicated script is I'll actually echo things before and after. So I'll say attempting curl fetch. And I might put a double bar and say exit 1. By the way, one thing we forgot to do here is set E so that it escapes every time upon any error it would exit. And I might actually uncomment that for the moment. So then I might actually take a line and say echo success curl fetch. So nothing should possibly cause this to exit a simple curl statement. But what I can do is put an exit 1 at the end of that line as well. So any one of these lines is going to exit with a non-zero error code. Basically, I'm wrapping these in comments so that when I run it, I'm actually going to have some output in my console that I can see. Oh, here's what it's working on now. Here's what it's working on now. I could even say sleep for 5, and that's going to put a little timer into the script. Now I want to decompress it. So now I need to say, where is tar? So let me use tar here in the full path. I want to decompress it using gzip, and I'll be verbose, and I want to decompress that. Okay, and I won't bother to, maybe okay, I'm going to remove these little exits just because they're not so meaningful for a simple operation. Great, so now I've decompressed that. Now I'll sleep for another 5. And I've done my second task, decompress. So now if I'd like to output the length in lines, well, what I need to know first is, what is this going to be called when I decompress it? And I think if I go here back to my sandbox, I could just say tar. Great, and there's what my file name is, remote-data.tsv. Now I need to know that because I need to perform operations on that, and I need to, I got to know the name of it. This is also, by the way, I'm expecting a predictable file name because I'm going to hard code the file name here. So that's a variable that may or may not be given to you. You may have a file name that is, and this is really common in the business world, it's going to be named based upon date. So it might be something like 2021-02-24 remote-data.tsv, and that means it's the remote data file for today or for whatever, it's not the 24th yet, but you get the point. So sometimes you're going to have to pass in a variable, or maybe you have to go out to a remote system and fetch the variable, or just output the file name to grab it as a variable and know what to do with it. So let's see, what is our next, let me switch there and say where is WC? And so I'm going to say, there's WC in length for that. So it should print out the lines, and I can say number of lines in file is. Great, so we've fixed number 3 now. Now I want to convert it to TSV. Well, I actually happen to have a shell script that will do that automatically for me. So I'm going to grab that little bit of code, and we'll say sleep 5 here. Here's the full path to TR, and it is going to take the remote data file.tsv as an input here, and then we're just going to rename the same thing with CSV right here. So it's going to convert the TSV into CSV. Great. And let's double bar and exit one that. Remember, this is sort of like a breakpoint. Anytime one of these fails, it's going to come out. Echo converting to CSV. Sleep 5. So we've converted it. Oops. Now we need to zip it up. Zip takes 2 arguments, and we need to know the full path to zip. So which is zip? User bin zip. Great. That's predictable. So it's taking 2 things. First, it needs to know the name of the archive we're creating. So we're going to just call it remote data.zip. And what are we zipping up? Well, we don't have this TSV anymore, or that's not what we want. We want to compress the remote CSV. So that's my second argument. So in other words, off of zip, we are creating a new bundle, and this is the only contents of that bundle. By the way, if you should know this, especially programmatically useful when you have to do for loops and things like that, and you want to add a whole bunch of files, maybe 500 files, and you want to add them one by one to a zip archive, there's actually a flag, I forget, I think it's a T flag, where you can create a bundle with one file. Then you can amend that by adding a second file, adding a third file, adding a fourth file. And it's actually amending the zip over and over and sort of building it programmatically over time. Really useful. And you can do semicolons if you want to after these. Sleep 5 again. This is a very linear, very business process sort of thing. Now, which AWS? All right, so I'm gonna, here's my AWS. It's going to find my credentials automatically. So I want to invoke the S3 service, and I want to copy the zip. So I'm going to copy that, and maybe I could, at this point I could say ACL public read. At this point I could just leave nothing off and it will remain private in my bucket. But what I do need is the name of a bucket to put it in. And I'm going to put it into DS3002 resources. So in S3, I need to use the S3 protocol. Oops. I'll just call it zips, where I put that. Exit 1. So I've sent it off. And now, if I'd like, I'll just be consistent here and put semicolons after all of these. You can use them. It's optional either way. I'm actually going to fold this down, or maybe just get this out of the way. Yeah, should have done that a while ago. Okay, so that's useful. And I guess what I'd like to do here is say echo zipping up. And here I'd like to say echo shipping to S3. Sleep 5, and now I'd like to use the SNS service again. And let's see. You can see all my ugly tabs. I'm going to say console, root, sign in, all the way. Now I'm going to go to the SNS service. So this is the simple notification service, really quite simple. I've got 4 topics, and one of them is standard notifications, and it's going to a Lambda function. I don't want that. Why don't I just create a new one? Standard. That's it, simple topic. And I'm going to create a subscription using SMS. It's in the footer of my email, so it doesn't matter that I give you I do my country code there. It doesn't matter that I show this on the screen. Okay, so I now have an SNS topic. I'm going to copy this ARN. But let's see what I need. I'd like to send a notification out. And basically I want to say AWS SNS help. And it will tell me, I can just, no double flag needed. What are the operations here? I can create a topic, I can get topic attributes and so on. I can list platform, list subscriptions. I want to publish. So now I can say publish, publish, help. And so what does it need when it publishes? It needs a topic ARN and a message. Okay, so topic ARN and message. Great. So now I know what I need. My ARN happens to be here. This is my Amazon resource name, a unique resource. We're not going to really worry about things like SNS this semester. These are advanced topics, but we are going to work with S3. We'll work with Lambda. We might work with Glacier a little bit and a couple of other services, but nothing too crazy. So there is my topic ARN. And I'll just say something goofy like success. So echo sending SMS message. Okay, so at this point we have a pretty clear linear path. We have no if conditionals at all. We have no complicated for loops or anything like that. This is straight linear, and this is what a typical pipeline will do is be a fairly straightforward leg along a longer chain, and so you might have logic, at the beginning or end of one of these that sort of sends it off to another section. So think of it like a multi-tiered sort of structure. At this point, we could execute this. Probably the only options I would tell you that you could possibly do here, we'll set this, is we could define a variable. We're seeing this phrase remote data a lot. And let's just say that were, a common name that we're going to see. We could set that, file equals remote data. And now we could actually just refer to this with a $sign. So file.that, file.that. You see how it's the same string. So it's basically like doing string substitution in Python. But this is programmatically so that I only have to declare that value one time, and then it's usable. And I could even include that, into here. I could build up a longer message, programmatically into a variable, and I could spit out the variable into here. But at this point, we're pretty ready to go. And so let me quit that. And we're now to converter. So I'm going to chmod that to 755 to converter. And I'm going to look at the head of that. And my bin bash is just fine. So, okay. Maybe I'll switch over to console. Sorry, fingers askew there. Yeah, so converter is here. So let's go ahead and fire it off, complete with weights and everything like that. So successful curl fetch. We got it, and now we're in the middle of a sleep. Now we're decompressing. Sleeping, so number of lines in it is 101 because it has 100 content lines and one header line. Now it's converting it to CSV. Now it's zipping that up. Now it's shipping up to S3. Here's the long URL. And okay, everything happened great except for the SMS message. This is because the new CLI 2 version needed a little bit more. So it was missing some portion of the command. But hopefully this gets across the point that that scripts can do a number of sequential tasks for you. You can certainly You can put some escaping in there so that if particular errors happen, you could grab that error and parse it and sort of understand it and maybe retry something again. Maybe if it fails, maybe it should send you a message. Oftentimes, to be honest, once we have a script in production or a Lambda function in production and it works, then we don't notify ourselves. We then put a condition so that we only get a notification if it fails. That's really useful to know when something fails. So I'm hoping this kind of helps give you an idea of it. I'll go and poke in later at what the problem. It's public. That was the command. I used my fat fingered the command, so that it wasn't correct, but it would probably work the next time. All right, I'll leave you to it. Thanks.